The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by guest chaplain Bishop Larry Lawrence Brandon, Praise Temple, Shreveport, Louisiana.
Let us pray. Almighty and compassionate God, we humbly gather our hearts in solemn prayer for the United States of America. Grant us, O guiding light, the serenity that breeds peace, embracing our land from coast to coast. May justice, impartial, and unwavering love flow through the veins of society, uniting us in the pursuit of equality for all. Bestow upon the United States House of Representatives the wisdom to navigate complexities, fostering unity and understanding in their decisions. Lord, please illuminate their minds to serve with integrity for the betterment of our diverse yet United States of America. May the spirit of collaboration prevail over discord, and may the collective aspirations of liberty and justice be the compass that guides this great nation towards a future of harmony where all voices are heard and the flame of democracy continues to burn bright. God, bless America and help us, America, to bless you. Amen.
The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania, Ms. Dean.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to introduce my longtime friend, Bishop Larry Lawrence Brandon, who I've had the honor of hosting as our guest chaplain in the House today. Bishop Brandon is the senior pastor of Praise Temple Missionary Baptist Church, which has faithfully served the people of the Shreveport-Bossier area for over 3 decades. In 1992, Bishop Brandon and 6 others founded Praise Temple. They met in the homes of local church leaders for prayer offerings and Bible study until they eventually moved into a worship space in Shreveport. Under his dutiful stewardship, the church flourished. They have built, quote, a church where the doors swing on the hinges of love, as their motto states. Last year, he moved back to his hometown of Oakland, California, to expand his ministry, but he holds deep ties to our area back home and is a beloved member of our community. Bishop Brandon has been a trusted leader in the Shreveport-Bossier area. He's served in leadership roles in local nonprofits and civic organizations and faith-based ministries, and still serves as president of the Northwest Louisiana Community Development Corporation. A great advocate for the sanctity of every human life, his work in the community and in biblical scholarship has served as an important reminder of the eternal hope that we have in Christ. I'm grateful that he is joining us as our guest chaplain, and I yield back.
The chair will entertain up to 5 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Today I rise to recognize the profound impact of Dr. Roberto E. Garcia from South Texas. Born in the humblest of circumstances in Alice, Texas, he embraced the values of faith, family, and hard work. From serving our nation bravely in the Navy during Vietnam War to transforming the educational landscape in school districts like San Diego ISD and Robstown ISD. Dr. Garcia's dedication is unparalleled. He's not only an educator, but a cornerstone in our community. Establishing the Alice Dallas soccer program, supporting the church, and advocating for veterans. I commend Dr. Garcia for his unwavering commitment to service, his resilience in the face of adversity, and his enduring contributions to the Lone Star State and to our nation. The People's House salutes you, Dr. Garcia. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In just a few years, we've had a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, a worldwide energy crisis, and as a result, the fastest inflation in 40 years. The cost of living is too high, and the financial strain on American families is real, and Americans just needed help. So last Congress, Democrats took action. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is creating 600,000 good-paying union jobs next year alone, with many more to follow. The CHIPS and Science Act is bringing manufacturing back to the United States. The Inflation Reduction Act is reducing the deficit and lowering household costs from energy to prescription drugs. And while we acted, Republicans parroted misleading talking points, falsely claiming that this legislation somehow hurts Americans. Instead, America sees progress. Annual inflation fell to its lowest in more than 2.5 years. Gas prices have declined nearly 40%. The IRS collected $122 million from wealthy tax evaders. So as we end this year better than we started, I urge House Republicans to reject the politics of disinformation and tearing down. Instead, join us and build this strong economy. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise to honor U.S. Air Force veteran and Marion Police Officer Corporal Ron Slagle for his 25 years spent protecting our Iowa communities. Last month, Corporal Slagle signed off on his last shift with the Marion Police Department, my hometown, with a final 1042 alongside his family and friends. From his time in the Air Force to his dedication to the Marion Police Department and his advocacy to ensure that law enforcement officers, first responders, and veterans have access to mental health care resources, Corporal Slagle embodies what it means to be a public servant. It's no surprise that he has instilled the value of service in his children, who have also embraced careers to help others. He has a true servant's heart, and I wish him all the best in his retirement. Congratulations, Ron. Thank you. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Hang on. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the University of Michigan football team for winning the Big Ten championship. This past weekend, the Wolverines capped off their dominant regular season with a Big Ten title, earning themselves a #1 rank in the country and a trip to the coveted football playoffs. But this season for the Wolverines has been characterized by more than just victories on the field. This program has a saying: those who stay will be champions. The team may be champions and are champions on the field, but they will also be champions off the field and forever in their personal lives. You see, this team faced challenges at every level with national ridicule of their program and their coach, Coach Harbaugh. Yet they persisted. The young men of Team 144 took every bump in stride and held on to the words of former head coach Bo Schembechler, and they took those words to heart. The team, the team, the team. Team 144 is an embodiment of what it means to work as a team and overcome adversity both on and off the field. We are so proud of these young men and Coach Harbaugh and look forward to cheering them on in the playoffs. Congratulations, Team 144, and go blue.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Silence your heart. Look into the eyes of this young American. Tomorrow, he would have been 101 years old. On December the 8th, 1941, for his 19th birthday, he got World War II. Like millions of other young men across the country, when the attack on Pearl Harbor was announced the following day, after that fateful morning on December the 7th, this young man stood up, went and joined the Navy. Navy sent him to flight school. He served his country as a pilot in World War II. He died many years later as I held his hand. This man was my father, George Joseph Higgins. Happy birthday, Dad. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the resolution under consideration.
Without objection?
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady will suspend. Does the gentlelady wish to call up a House joint resolution?
Mr. Speaker, I call up H.J. Res. 88.
The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
Union Calendar Number 203, House Joint Resolution 88. Joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Department of Education relating to improving income-driven repayment for the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program and the Federal Family Education Loan FFEL program.
Pursuant to the House Resolution 906, the joint resolution is considered read. The joint resolution shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority members of the Committee on Education and the Workforce or their respective designees. The gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.J. Res. 88, a Congressional Review Act resolution authored by Representative McClain of Michigan that would bar the Biden administration from spending hundreds of billions of dollars by executive fiat. On June 30th of this year, mere hours after the Supreme Court decapitated the administration's previous student loan scheme, the Department of Education unveiled its so-called Savings on a Valuable Education, SAVE plan. Despite its deceptive name, that is, without question, the most expensive regulation in our nation's history. So how bad will the damage be? The Congressional Budget Office estimates this new IDR program will actually cost over $260 billion over the next 10 years, over $100 billion more than what the department was telling the American people. But wait, there's more. Outside experts estimate the cost to be as much as $559 billion. Clearly, this is not a repayment plan, and Democrats have not been shy about their intentions for reshaping post-secondary education. Indeed, Democrats couldn't get their socialist free college fantasy through Congress, so they're attempting to shove it down the throats of Americans through the loan program
by executive fiat. Mr. Speaker, millions of Americans are grasping their wallets at this news, and rightfully so. They've already been pummeled by inflation for months on end, and now they're staring down an avalanche of debt this country cannot afford that will surely bury them if Congress doesn't put an end to this madness. H.J. Res. 88 offers us the opportunity to send a clear signal to this administration that we will no longer tolerate a dictator-in-chief. Here's the simple truth. Money cannot be printed out of thin air without consequences. We should pass H.J. Res. 88 and put an end to this reckless use of taxpayer dollars. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.J. Res. 88, the Congressional Review Act on Saving on a Valuable Education Plan. Last August, the Department of Education launched the SAVE plan, a new generous income-driven repayment, or IDR plan, to significantly lower payments for many low and moderate income borrowers. Additionally, if income borrowers make their full payment, but their full payment required is not enough to cover the accrued interest, the government covers the rest of the interest, and this means that the SAVE plan eliminates the indignity of balances growing due to unpaid interest. The improved application allows borrowers to have their income securely assessed through the Internal Revenue Service, so that they don't have to recertify their incomes every year. Finally, repealing the SAVE Act would be extremely disruptive for millions of Americans enrolled in the program. In fact, the department reported last month that 5.5 million borrowers have already enrolled in the program, including nearly 18,000 borrowers in my district and about 8,600 in the district represented by the gentlelady from North Carolina. They're already enjoying the improvements in the plan and the lower payments. Mr. Speaker, we're responsible for strengthening support for those seeking a college degree, not just because everyone should be forced to get one, but because those who want a college degree should have access to that opportunity. As President Johnson noted when he signed the Higher Education Act into law in 1965, he said that it meant that a high school senior anywhere in this great land of ours can apply to any college or university in any of the 50 states and not be turned away because the family is poor. Repealing the SAVE Act does nothing to make higher education more affordable or accessible, and for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I oppose the bill. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman has reserved. The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Michigan, Representative McClain.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank Chairman Fox for yielding. I just want to remind the American people that every time someone says the government pays, the government will pay, it's not the government, because the government doesn't produce anything. When they refer to the government, they refer to you, the American taxpayer, will pay. The government doesn't pay, the American taxpayer pays. So I want to clear that up just to make sure every time we hear the government will pay, that's really the hardworking American people. The government is just choosing how they spend the American taxpayers' money. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise support of this House Joint Resolution 88, a Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval I introduced to block President Biden's extreme student loan giveaway. This new regulation, ironically dubbed the SAVE Plan, is the most expensive regulation in our nation's history and is a backdoor attempt to ram the administration's socialist free college fantasy down the throats of hard-working taxpayers. It's their money. According to the Wharton School budget model, this plan will cost as much as $559 billion over the next decade, far exceeding the price tag of the president's illegal student loan bailout ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Further, the Biden administration's plan would completely ruin our post-secondary education financing system, putting higher costs on taxpayers who never attended college in the first place. So I can't buy a house. I choose not to buy a house, but my neighbor chooses to buy a house, and then I get to foot the bill. That's what this administration is asking us to sign up for unconstitutionally. Experts from across the political spectrum agree that Biden's income-driven repayment plan makes the exception instead of the norm. Just 2 in 10 undergraduate borrowers will fully repay their loans, and the average student will pay roughly half of what is borrowed from taxpayers in the first place. Not only does this plan shift the cost of loans from the borrower, the person who actually took out the loan, it shifts the cost to the person who never took the loan out to begin with, the taxpayer, the hardworking taxpayer. But it also will make college more expensive. Under the president's plan, colleges will continue to increase prices and force students to actually have to borrow more that they don't need to repay, knowing that this is ultimately the hardworking taxpayers who will foot the bill. The Congressional Budget Office even estimates that the SAVE plan will increase student borrowing by $100 billion over the next decade. Increasing costs by $100 billion, I'm not sure what's saving in that. In other words, the president is forcing through the most expensive regulation in history, increasing prices to attend college. Well, that doesn't make any sense. And then telling taxpayers, many of them who didn't attend college, or if they already did attend college, they get to pay off their loans and somebody else's loans. They need to subsidize the ones who went to college, even if you didn't go to college. This is unfair and unconstitutional. The Biden administration is more concerned with scoring political points with his base through executive rule than actually fixing the student loan issue. Republicans actually have a plan, one that is fiscally responsible, like the FAIR Act I introduced with Representative Owens and Chairman Fox, that would actually fix the Democrat-created problems with our loan repayment system. President Biden has attempted to write off as much as $1 trillion of student loans since taking office without congressional approval. It is clear that President Biden and his unelected bureaucrats he's put in power have no respect for the hardworking taxpayers that he is forcing to foot the bill time and time again. This administration has ignored the will of Congress and the Supreme Court, I might add, in his radical free college approach. The Supreme Court said enough. The Education and Workforce Committee said enough. Now it's time for the House to say enough. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.J. Res. 88, reaffirm the Congress's constitutional power of the purse, and defend the taxpayers in this country.
Time has expired.
I yield back. Thank you.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield such time as she may consume to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Macbeth.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much, Ranking Member Scott, and to his staff. I rise today on behalf of the thousands of working families in my district who are struggling under the burden of unseemingly endless student loan debt. A college credential continues to be the surest path to economic security, and we must help to make sure that every student, regardless of their background or their zip code, has the resources necessary to achieve their dreams through education. That means setting our students up for success, not confining them to a lifetime of making payments that barely cover the interest on their loans. The American people who stand to be harmed by this bill are more than just numbers. They're not just statistics. These are real live human beings with real life experiences. And I'd like to remind my colleague, Ms. McClain from Michigan, that in her district, there are at least 9,900 borrowers enrolled in the SAVE plan, which will significantly lower their monthly payments. If Republicans succeed and this bill undoes the income-driven repayment plan, more than 5 million student loan borrowers enrolled in the plan will see their monthly payments go up. These are real people. They are nurses, they're engineers, they're teachers with families and mortgages and groceries that they need to buy, who are going to lose the opportunity to pay off their loans in a way that really fits their budgets. The American people are tired of these empty and broken promises. They are tired of being asked to give more and more of themselves while it gets increasingly expensive to acquire the skills necessary just to make a decent living. I encourage all of my colleagues to oppose this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself 30 seconds. I think Ms. McBath just made my argument for me. She said the American people are tired of being asked to give more. Well, in her district, she has almost 300,000 people without a bachelor's degree, and the cost per person for what the Biden administration is doing is $3,768. In Representative Scott's district, 355,000 have no bachelor's degree. They're being forced to cough up $3,768 for people who don't want to pay their bills. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Representative Good.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your time this morning. I rise today in support of H.J. Res. 88, a resolution that will nullify President Biden's irresponsible student loan repayment plan. It's no secret that President Biden wants to borrow and spend taxpayer dollars to force you and your children to pay for other people's education. Earlier this year, Biden vetoed my bipartisan resolution that nullified his student loan transfer scheme. Thankfully, the Supreme Court agreed with Congress that unilateral federal spending for outright forgiveness by the president is unconstitutional. However, the administration lost no time in devising yet another scheme to transfer loan debt to taxpayers, this time under the guise of repayment. The Biden administration's new repayment scheme would permit even more graduates to contribute even less money to loan payments. These borrowers who voluntarily took taxpayer money will contribute just 5% of their monthly income to the loan. They can also be exempt from paying interest, and if enough time passes, the loan will be forgiven altogether or actually paid for by other Americans. The Biden administration sells this scheme by promising it will reduce many borrowers' loan payments to zero. However, the American taxpayer will foot the bill. I'm reminded of October of 20, the vote buying scheme that was the previous student loan transfer scheme, transferring that debt to other Americans. Policies like this undermine personal responsibility and teach a generation to have little regard for the value of money. But thanks to Biden inflation, the dollar has far less buying power today than when he took office. Americans feel this at the grocery store, the gas pump, and when paying their rent and utility bills. Yet this new scheme means that at least $276 billion in loans paid out to students will never be returned to the Treasury as promised. As he overspends by $200 billion a month and drives us to $34 trillion in debt, the president may personally be insulated from the impact of his reckless, wasteful borrowing and spending, but the American people are certainly suffering from his harmful policies. Many of my constituents paid their way through college or didn't go to college because they couldn't afford it, and they should not have to cover Biden's $276 billion in unpaid student loans. As Dr. Fox, our chairman, just said a moment ago, my district also has an example that we've got 293 individuals in our district who don't have a college degree, and they should not have to pay their share, $3,800 each, for this latest student loan transfer scheme by this president. Over the last 3 years, our government has nearly destroyed the student loan system by freezing payments, promising forgiveness, and changing loan terms. It's got to stop. Americans cannot afford it. We can help today by voting in favor of this legislation, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind our colleagues that, yield myself as time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
And I'd like to remind our colleagues that my colleague from Virginia, in his district, there are over 11,000 borrowers already enrolled in the SAVE plan, which significantly lowered their monthly payments. I'd also like to quote from a letter that we've received from the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, which says in part, for decades, students have been told that a college education is one of the most important vehicles to get ahead, but years of disinvestment and actions of predatory loan services drastically tightened the shackles of debt, destroying students' budgets, and the COVID-19 made that predicament far worse. Fortunately, the Biden administration stepped up with a plan to help student loan borrowers. I ask unanimous consent that this and another letter from the National Education Association be entered into the record.
Without objection.
I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.J. Res. 88, which I'm a co-sponsor of. This Congressional Review Act would stop President Biden's radical SAVE program that alters the income-driven repayment program to redefine the vast majority of borrowers as financially distressed. It saves nothing. In fact, in my business, it's called false advertising. And costing the taxpayer an estimated $559 billion is effectively a loan cancellation program in disguise. And who's talking about the lenders? Who's talking about the people that loan the money, i.e. the people of America? So in June, President Biden's unconstitutional plan to cancel outstanding loan debt was struck down by the Supreme Court, who stated that the authority to cancel student loan lies with Congress and Congress only, and not President Biden. This latest plan by President Biden is yet another attempt to ignore the Supreme Court and sidestep Congress, even after members of his own party have admitted the executive branch lacks the authority to do so. Yesterday, the President announced that his administration approved another $4.8 billion in student loan cancellation, bringing the current total to over $130 billion, basically sponsoring deadbeats. Now, this is a slap in the face to the taxpayer, forcing the 87% of Americans who do not hold any federal student loan debt and who have made sound financial decisions to foot the bill for those unwilling to pay off the debt they chose to rack up. What this administration refuses to admit to the American people is that this is not debt cancellation or debt forgiveness, but a shift of responsibility from the borrowers to the pocketbooks of hardworking families. In Texas, where I come from, a deal's a deal. You pay your debt back and a handshake still works. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of H.J. Res. 88 and put a stop to this administration's unlawful attack on the American taxpayer. In God we trust. I yield back.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as he may consume, and would like to remind our colleagues that the gentleman from Texas's district, there are over 8,000 borrowers already enrolled in the same SAVE plan. They're already saving money, and the passage of this resolution would increase their monthly payments. I've reserved the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Virginia reserves. Gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to another gentleman from Texas, Representative Pfluger.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the chairwoman for your leadership on this. I rise in strong support of H.J. Res. 88 to block President Biden's taxpayer-funded student loan bailout. Here we go again. If you don't succeed and the Supreme Court says it's not constitutional, well, let's find another way. Let's find another mechanism. That's exactly what we're facing today. We're standing in the gap, Mr. Speaker. This rule unjustly imposes an excessive burden on hardworking American taxpayers who should not be forced to shoulder the responsibility for student debt that is not their own. It's not a coincidence that on the same day the Supreme Court found the Biden administration's first attempt at loan forgiveness unconstitutional, the Department of Education announced this final rule to allow a majority of bachelor's degree student loan borrowers to avoid paying back even the principal on their loans. Let me be clear. This rule does not offer genuine debt forgiveness. Instead, it shifts the weight of $559 billion in federal student loans onto the shoulders of almost 90% of Americans who don't have those student loans. This includes individuals who may earn significantly less than those who took out the loans in the first place. Rather than addressing the root causes of a student loan debt crisis, the administration would rather transfer the financial burden onto taxpayers, exacerbating our ongoing issues with inflation and contributing further to our staggering $33 trillion of national debt. This approach is not only flawed, but fundamentally unfair to those who opted not to attend college, who diligently paid their own way through school, or who have already successfully paid off their own student loans. This is what the White House is pushing. And by the way, they're also pushing dollars into institutions like Harvard and Penn and other schools that we found out this week the presidents can't even admit that there's anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish hatred messages in their own institutions that are happening. They can't even admit it. As a Texan, I can confidently tell you that no hardworking constituent in my district wants to pay for any degree at Harvard using taxpayer money, certainly not ours. And by the way, until those presidents of those universities acknowledge the anti-Jewish message, the hatred that has occurred on their college campuses, I would urge Congress not to send another dollar of federal money to any of those institutions. House Republicans are blocking the Biden administration's illogical and unreasonable student loan bailout program, and I urge my colleagues to join me in this effort. Let's be clear. It is not fair, and it is not American, and the Supreme Court has said it is unconstitutional that Americans should bear the burden of student loans that they did not incur themselves. And for that, I urge a strong stance on this, and urge my colleagues to protect the hard-earned dollars of American taxpayers and prevent further financial strain. I yield back.
Gentlewoman from North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. And would like to remind our colleagues that the gentleman from Texas's district, over 6,600 borrowers have already enrolled in the SAVE plan. They're already saving money, and the passage of this legislation would significantly increase their payments. And, Mr. Speaker, I'd advise the chair of the committee that I'm prepared to close.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Was also, so I will let him do the closing
gentlewoman
segment.
Reserves.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman
Speaker.
is recognized.
Earlier this year, my Republican colleagues clamored and complained about President Biden's plan to provide debt relief for millions of borrowers. And now the House Republicans are trying to saddle millions of Americans and future borrowers with more debt by repealing the SAVE plan, which has already significantly lowered monthly payments for many low and middle income borrowers. Repealing the SAVE plan would cause significant disruption, but that seems to be the theme of my colleagues in this Congress. And Mr. Speaker, it's imperative and important to know how we got here into the student loan crisis. It was created because the buying power of the Pell Grant has fallen dramatically over the years, originally covering about 80% of the cost of the tuition room and board at a state college, now less than 30%. All of that cost has been shifted over to the students. The people debating today went to college when the Pell Grant covered 80% and didn't have to take out a student loan. Now that we've shifted the cost to the students, that's where the student loan problem comes from. And the states are putting a significantly lower portion, covering a lower portion of the cost of the college, again, putting more of the burden on the students. And we should be covering more of a percentage of the students, and this is one of the ways by having them, helping them pay their student loans. we can help pay their way through college. We should pass proposals to make college more affordable for current and future students, not less, and that's what the Biden administration has been doing. We've heard complaints about the shift of this burden onto the taxpayer. I'll tell you that we didn't hear any of that during the debate on the PPP loans, where businessmen got millions of dollars of PPP loans with handshakes and everything else and didn't have to pay them back. We didn't hear any complaints about that, about people that didn't own businesses, but all of a sudden when a student tries to get an education, all of a sudden we can't help them pay their loans. We should be passing proposals to make college more affordable for these students and future students, yet here we are wasting our time passing this resolution that everybody knows isn't going anywhere. In fact, the Senate last month took up a similar proposal and it didn't pass. So it's not going to pass. Whatever happens here, it's not going to pass the Senate, and the president's going to veto it anyway. So again, the bottom line is that we're responsible for strengthening support for those seeking a college degree, not because everybody should be forced to get one, but because those who want a college education and move up in life should be able to have access to that opportunity, not just the privileged few that can write the $50,000 a year checks. So I urge my colleagues to oppose H.J. Res. 88 and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia yields. The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
You're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the Biden administration knows that its so-called SAVE plan is illegal, and yet it has no problem putting its foot down on the gas pedal. As my colleague has admitted, this is, quote, helping them pay their way through college, end quote, which is what we've been saying. This is a radical plan by the Biden administration to pay for college expenses. Let's make one thing perfectly clear. The so-called SAVE plan is the administration's game of ruling by executive decree and pinning the tab on the taxpayer. The Biden administration is transferring debt from those who willingly took it out to those who didn't have a chance to go to college. This is unfair. America's student loan system is broken, and this reckless, inflationary, and illegal expansion of executive authority will all but ensure it's doomed beyond repair. The plan isn't about helping borrowers, and it sure isn't protecting taxpayers. It's about an upcoming election and an administration dead set on using the executive pen to reshape our country. That's the stone-cold truth of this matter. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.J. Res. 88, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina yields. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 906, the previous question is ordered. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
For congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5, United States Code, of the rules submitted by the Department of Education relating to improving income-driven repayment for the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program and the Federal Family Education Loan FFEL program.
The question is on the passage of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Request recorded vote.
The gentlewoman requests the yeas and nays.
I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House is in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.
Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order: passage of House Joint Resolution 88 and then adoption of House Resolution 914. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. This is a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on passage of House Joint Resolution 88, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
Union Calendar number 203, House Joint Resolution 88. Joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Department of Education relating to improving income-driven repayment for the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loan Program and the Federal Family Education Loan FFEL program.
The question is on passage of the joint resolution. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 205, the nays. The yeas are 210, the nays are 189. The joint resolution is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the adoption of House Resolution 914, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 914, resolution censuring Representative Jamal Bowman.
The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 214, the nays are 191. The resolution is, with 5 present, the resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Will Representative Bowman present himself in the well? By its adoption of House Resolution 914, the House has resolved that the House of Representatives censures Jamal Bowman, representative from the 16th Congressional District of New York, that Representative Jamal Bowman forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Jamal Bowman be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
The gentleman from Missouri seek recognition.
Ask for unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet on Monday next, when it shall convene at noon for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection. House will come to order. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
And Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
House will be in order. House will be in order. House will be in order. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise before you today to recognize an important day in American history. On December 7th, 1941, our great nation was suddenly attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy, leading to the death of 2,043 American service members and civilians. 82 years later, we remember these brave souls who lost their lives that day defending our very freedoms. On August 23, 1994, Congress created the National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day to honor the lives lost each year. Now, on December 7, 2023, we once again recognize and remember every man and woman who laid down their life for the United States that day. We are forever indebted to their sacrifices. In the time of war, our great nation was able to to preserve. Let this day be a reminder to us that our freedom should never be taken for granted. God bless those who lost their lives that day, and God bless America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Buddy. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss the Republican presidential frontrunner's criminal connections after the latest Republican presidential debate. At least 11 key figures in Donald Trump's past administration were indicted or convicted of serious crimes during and after his administration. Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager, was convicted of tax and bank fraud. Michael Flynn, Trump's national security advisor. His national security advisor was charged with working with Russia. Tom Barrack, a Trump fundraiser, was charged with spying for the United Arab Emirates. Steve Bannon, Trump's political advisor, was charged with stealing millions of dollars from border wall investors. In addition, more than 1,100 people have been charged after Trump encouraged them to overthrow the U.S. government on January 6, 2021. And an appeals court ruled that Trump could be sued for inciting that insurrection. These are not the associations of someone fit to be a presidential candidate. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize a legend in the Michigan motorcycle freedom and safety community. Vince Consiglio, who announced his upcoming retirement in January. Vince is the president of ABATE of Michigan, or American Bikers Aiming Toward Education. Vince, who has served as president for over 30 years, joined ABATE in 1975 and has served in multiple roles, including as Michigan's chief Motorcycle Safety Foundation instructor, teaching many MSF instructors the importance of safe riding practices. He's been integral in public education about the issues impacting motorcyclists, working with state legislators to increase motorcycle awareness and protect the cherished heritage we share. I've personally known Vince for many years and know him to be a man of character, passionate about motorcycles, especially his Harley. I want to wish Vince a happy and fulfilling retirement and thank him for his service to his fellow riders and ABATE. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to draw attention to the Puerto Rico Act 22 and echo the concerns of many, including my constituents, about this tax loophole. Because of Act 22, Puerto Rico is the only place in the world where a mainland U.S. citizen can move and not pay a dime in federal capital gains or income tax without renouncing their citizenship. Act 22 was sold as an economic boost in the shadow of a recession, but that's not what's happened. Millionaires and billionaires are flocking to the island to avoid paying taxes. A cottage industry of tax professionals and CPAs has emerged to support these tax evaders. Crypto magnates, real estate speculators, and internet influencers like Logan Paul are part of a new generation of gentrifiers driving up costs and displacing Puerto Ricans. I'm pleased that the IRS is cracking down on related fraud, and thanks to my colleagues' efforts, federal investigations on the impacts of these policies have begun.
The gentleman's time is expired.
Act 22 is a larger story, and it should be repealed.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Kevin Exley, who was recently elected city councilman for the city of Rincon on September the 21st. The city of Rincon opened polls up for a special election to fill an empty council seat following Damon Ron's departure in June. Now, thanks to Kevin Exley, that seat is occupied. Exley has made it known that he wants to focus on updating ordinances, adjusting term limits, and adding some neighborhood safety measures. Rincon's special election was indeed special. September the 19th started out with only a few voters, but quickly grew to hundreds showing up their cast to ballots. Congratulations, Kevin. I know you will serve the city of Rincon well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Excellent. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Speaker, I rise, request and ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to thank and honor the brave first responders who risked their lives to save Hudson Valley families after a catastrophic gas explosion in Wappingers Falls injured 15 in our community last month, several severely. Officer Devin Ludwig, investigator Andrew Hettinger, and firefighter John Marco Nikolovich ran back into extreme peril to carry out victims trapped inside the smoldering rubble. John even himself refused medical attention for injuries sustained during the rescue until all others were out safely. Firefighter Raquan White pulled an injured victim from the scene and with backup medical personnel still en route, took it upon himself to transport the victim to a nearby hospital for immediate care, saving their life. Officer Corchado, Wappingers Falls Fire Chief Ensign, Detective Sergeant Farrell, Lieutenant Riveri, Deputies Kemledge and Arnow, and contractors from J. Mullen and Sons are among the countless other heroes who displayed exceptional courage that day. Our Hudson Valley community and those affected in particular owe you a deep debt of gratitude that we will never be able to truly repay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize a landmark event in our nation's military history, the 83rd anniversary of the groundbreaking of Fort Leonard Wood in Pulaski County, Missouri. Fort Leonard Wood stands as a symbol of American excellence and dedication. The base's rich history is marked from its early beginnings, where it played a crucial role during World War II, serving as a training facility for more than 300,000 soldiers. Today, Fort Leonard Wood continues the level of excellence displayed in those beginnings, as it has become a cornerstone of our military's infrastructure, training more than 80,000 personnel each year. This facility's unique capability to train every branch of our military demonstrates its versatility and importance in our national defense. I urge all my colleagues to support this resolution, and doing so to recognize the 83rd anniversary of the groundbreaking of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker, I unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church's 120th anniversary. For over 120 years on the north side of Fort Worth, near the stockyards, this church has been a pillar of the community where people of all backgrounds can come and worship and gather. And in 1902, Miss Cindy Campbell Stovall, a dedicated Christian woman, organized the church's first Sunday school. They were held in the backyard of Mr. and Mrs. John Kennedy on the southwest corner of 24th and Ross. And for years, this church has been such a pivotal part of the Fort Worth community. They have organized so many different events and activities that benefit the north side and all of Fort Worth. From 1958 until 2015, they were under the direction of the Venerable and late Albert E. Chu, and now they are under the direction of Craig Lowell Pullman, and they continue to do great things. Again, Shiloh, congratulations on 120 years, and here's wishing you a great 120 more.
Thank you. For what purpose does a gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United States provides a lot of foreign aid to a lot of countries, and it's important that we make sure that money is being sent wisely. The Biden administration has not taken this responsibility serious at all, Mr. Speaker. The White House is currently pushing to send billions of dollars to Ukraine, even though we have already allocated over $110 billion to Ukraine and have no way of knowing where that money really ends up. We also have sent nearly $2 billion to Afghanistan since our botched withdrawal in 2021, even though we know a lot of that money ends up in the hands of the Taliban. I asked an expert witness in Foreign Affairs Committee hearing if there was any way the United States could provide aid to Afghanistan without any of it falling in the hands of the Taliban, and he said no. Yet when the president of Guatemala specifically requested aid to help block off one of the most popular travel routes for illegal immigrants coming to the United States, the Biden administration refused to help. It's pretty apparent to me, Mr. Speaker, that this administration has its foreign aid priorities all out of order. It needs to get serious about addressing issues that affect the American people, like our illegal immigration crisis, instead of trying to send billions of dollars of unchecked dollars to Ukraine and the Taliban. Thank you. I yield none of my time.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
Consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to applaud the Federal Railroad Administration's selection of the Cleveland, Sandusky, Toledo, Detroit corridor for a critical passenger rail grant. What a congested corridor it is. This federal funding is but the first step toward expanding passenger rail in northern Ohio, which has long suffered from underinvestment in rail infrastructure. To this day, our region continues to lack daytime passenger service due to congested rail service on the same tracks. Improving the connection to Detroit will also bolster our region's already strong ties with our Michigan and Canadian neighbors on the other side of the Great Lake we share, Lake Erie. Still, there is so much more to be done. We must find ways to advance passenger rail improvements in the Cleveland, Toledo to Chicago corridor, which, despite the tireless efforts of Grace Gallucci and others at the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, was not awarded federal planning funds. For our neglected region to be excellent at this planning opportunity for efficient passenger rail in view of freight congestion, federal funding is needed to establish a transportation planning center of expertise in Northwest Ohio. Let's not have any more East Palestines or Sandusky accidents. We need real rail planning in our region. I yield back.
For what purpose does a gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
2 months ago, on October 7th, Hamas launched an unprovoked attack on Israel, killing 1,200 Israelis, subjecting women to barbaric sexual violence, taking hostages, and upending the lives of so many innocent civilians. These attacks are abhorrent. The images, videos, and stories of the victims have rocked the world and impacted each of us. We must be unequivocal in condemning Hamas. That's why I led 87 colleagues in a bipartisan letter to UN Women after they still had not publicly condemned Hamas for these attacks and sexual violence against women. They have since reversed the course, but their silence for nearly 2 months leaves a stain on their mission as a leader on women's issues. I'll keep working to hold the Iranian regime accountable for their backing of Hamas terrorists behind these attacks, and I stand with Israel and our Jewish community always. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, four legislative days left in 2023.
Yesterday, I spoke from the well about the need to provide critical aid to Ukraine and Israel, just as I did the week before, just as I did the month before, just as I will continue to do until we act. All Congress has to show for its is a failed vote in the Senate yesterday. Speaker Johnson recently said, and I quote, "A strong majority of lawmakers in both the House and the Senate that understand this world is a lot more dangerous when America recedes from leadership. Clearly, we want to help our allies like Israel and Ukraine." If that's true, his actions belie his words. He refuses to give us a clean vote. The world becomes more dangerous. It must stop. Mr. Speaker, I will continue until we act. There are 300 votes on this floor for Ukraine and over 400 votes for Israel, yet we are unable to vote.
Gentleman's time has expired.
That is a shame for our country.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize and congratulate Plant City Fire Rescue's Firefighter of the Year, Devin Johnson. Mr. Johnson has the heart of a true public servant and has selflessly served our Plant City community for the past 5 years as a paramedic and firefighter. In 2021, Mr. Johnson completed the necessary certification to become a standalone paramedic and provide the highest level of life-saving care to our community. This year alone, Mr. Johnson has provided over 1,000 hours as a field training officer in the paramedic internship program, leading and guiding students to better their community. He has also worked more than 500 hours of overtime to keep the fire rescue running operationally. Mr. Johnson's Plant City Fire Rescue colleagues recognized him for his hard work, reliability, expertise, and continued dedication to the department and to our community. Congratulations, Firefighter Johnson, and thank you for your service to our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to introduce the bipartisan Marshall Major Taylor Congressional Gold Medal Act, the highest honor this body can bestow upon an American. Major Taylor was the greatest athlete of his era, America's first sports superstar, and a world champion. But he's been left out of our history books. We need to bring him out of the shadows and recognize his greatness both on and off the track. Not only did Taylor set world records and dominate his sport, but he did so while facing down racists and bigots in the Jim Crow era. Race organizers would try to exclude him from events. Other cyclists would viciously insult him and even did physical harm. But despite it all, the son of a Union soldier rose above it, setting record after record and becoming a world champion. Even when compared to today's athletes, Major Taylor is among the greatest cyclists of all times. It's time that Congress recognize the greatness and award him a gold medal. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, as we know, marks the 82nd anniversary of the dirty attack on Pearl Harbor, where the U.S. was thrown into war by the Imperial Japanese. Indeed, we should never, ever forget, and we should always have vigilance and readiness at a time right now when our world's in great peril, too. I worry about the readiness we have in order to do what we need to do to protect ourselves and those allies that we care about. But some of my best memories are some of the people I knew that were involved in Pearl Harbor at the time. My dear friend Mel Fisher and his wife Kathy on the 69th, when I was able to attend Pearl Harbor ceremonies with them on the USS Arizona. What a great moment for me to be able to be involved. As well, a great patriot, over 100 years old, still living In Grass Valley, California, Northern California, a good friend, Lou Conter, last surviving member of USS Arizona. So I want to think of the positive on that. Think of people like that. Think of these brave folks that stand in the gap for us, for our country. And on this day, we should honor them as we honor them every day by being good citizens and standing up for freedom in this country. I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise, and still I rise. And I rise today, as always, when I address persons in this most sacred place in my heart. I rise as a proud American. I am proud to say that I'm an American. I'm proud to say that I'm American because my foreparents made it what it is. Its greatness can be traced back to 240 years of free labor, free sacrifice. And I'm proud. I wear the tie, indicating that I'm proud. I salute the flag. I say the Pledge of Allegiance. I sing the national anthem. I am proud to be an American, and why wouldn't I be proud, given that my foreparents made it great? The greatness of America resides today on the economic foundation laid by persons of African ancestry. They are the economic foundational mothers and fathers of this country. Now, there are some who say to me, literally, how can you be proud, Al Green, when your foreparents were put into chains, when they were beaten, when women were raped, when they were born into slavery, lived their lives as slaves? How can you be proud? I can be proud because I have the power to forgive. The power to forgive. The power to forgive for all of these transgressions. God has given me this power. I would hope that others could acquire the power to forgive. The power to forgive is the power that will allow you to go on and to do other things. God did not give me, however, the power to forget. Forgive and forget is not a sensible statement of where the heart and mind should be, in my opinion. It is forgive and remember. Forgive all of the transgressions, but remember that they occurred. This is why we can say never again as it relates to certain transgressions. So I forgive, and I love the country, but I don't forget. And today I want to talk about my foreparents. This is a depiction of when they may have arrived on August 20th of 1619. I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about the racism in America today. As we discuss racism in America today, we have to first identify the reasons why Africans were enslaved. Reasons why America enslaved Africans, to be more specific. Remember, I'm the guy who's forgiving. I'm the guy who loves the country, sings the national anthem, but he doesn't forget. Why did America enslave Africans? Here's why. To be a permanent, I think 240 years of enslavement is a pretty good representation of the fact that there was an intentionality that it be permanent. To be a permanent, identifiable, easily recognized among the population. Permanent 240 years of enslavement. Identifiable, the complexion of skin as a methodology by which one could be immediately identified and put in his proper place or her proper place, their proper place. Permanent, identifiable, powerless. There was never the desire to have persons of African ancestry become powerful in this country. It was not there. I'm talking about at the genesis of this, August 20th, 1619, when they were first introduced into the colonies. There was slavery in the country prior to this, but we're talking about when it was introduced into the colonies. Brought here to be a permanent, identifiable, powerless. No power. The courts in this country actually recognized the fact that we were powerless. And Dred Scott, when the Chief Justice indicated that persons of African ancestry had no rights that a white person had to respect. Not in those exact words, but that's the exact meaning. Had no rights. Permanent, identifiable, powerless. Subservient. They were brought here to be servants, but not just servants in the sense of people who were to do the bidding of others, but to do so with a degree and a demeanor of servility. They had to be servile. Servile. Brought here to be a permanent, identifiable, powerless, subservient. Caste. Caste, not class. There's a distinction. Class has to do with a socioeconomic identification. Caste has to do with a hereditary identification, meaning if you were born into this caste, this group, you were to be a slave. You were enslaved by birth. By definition, at birth, you were enslaved. Permanently enslaved. Identifiably enslaved. Powerless as a slave. Subservient as a slave. Forever a slave as long as you lived. Reasons why America enslaved Africans. To be a permanent, identifiable, powerless, subservient caste of people. To this day, much of this still exists. To this day, there are still people who treat persons of African ancestry as though they are still powerless and should be subservient, and they belong to this caste. When Dr. King went to India on his pilgrimage, he was introduced at a certain venue. And when he was introduced, it was said to him that he was a part of a caste. Initially, he didn't really, in my opinion, know exactly how to respond to this because he's not been told that he was a part of a caste. But after giving some thought to it, he realized that to a certain extent there was this caste system. So to this day, there's still evidence of people who believe that we should be powerless. Let's examine that. We're obviously still identifiable, but still we should be powerless. We still have problems accessing the capital that allows one to succeed in society. We have evidence, empirical evidence, evidencing the fact that persons of African ancestry who are eminently qualified can apply for a loan, and they will pay higher points for that loan. They will receive less sometimes than what they need. They will pay a higher interest rate than an Anglo who is less qualified. Empirical evidence. I sit on the Financial Services Committee. We've looked into these things. The empirical evidence exists. Still a desire, powerless. Now, some people would say, are you saying that there's a conspiracy? I don't think anybody had a grand meeting and decided, well, we'll just continue this caste system by making sure they remain powerless in society. I don't think that happened. I think that it has been inculcated into the culture. The 240 years of slavery, thereafter followed with black codes, convict leasing, Jim Crow laws, thereafter followed with lawful and legal segregation. Lawful and legal segregation until 1954, the Brown case. It hadn't been that long ago. In my lifetime, I suffered lawful, legal segregation. Thank God I have the power to forgive. Powerless. Intentionality. Powerless. In the culture, it is not going to be eradicated overnight. One court decision will not eliminate 240 years of slavery plus an additional great number of years of lawful segregation. It doesn't eliminate it. And many of the people who suffer from this affliction, they don't know it in the sense that they purposefully do these things, but they happen. 240 years of slavery. Thereafter followed with lawful segregation. And now we still suffer as powerless people. I'm going to say more about powerless, but I want to just remind persons that we still are born black in America, still have the identifiable complexion. There are still people who expect us to be subservient, to be more respectful than others. I've seen it myself, wherein an Anglo person can say to a police officer that he or she or they happen to think is doing something inappropriate. Who do you think you are? Give me your badge number. I'm going to report you. The officer accepts it. African American says, who are you? Who do you think you are? It's unacceptable. There's a belief that you cannot challenge the system to the same extent as Anglos. All emanating from the permanent, identifiable, powerless, subservient caste. Now, let's give a supreme, superb example of being powerless. I think this example will speak in ways that many of us have not given consideration to. And I regret to have to bring this example to the attention of the House of Representatives, to the attention of the country, to the attention of the Senate. But here's the example. This building is the Russell Senate Office Building. The Russell Senate Office Building. This building is a symbol of national shame. A symbol of national shame. The Russell Senate Office Building. Taxpayer dollars built it. Taxpayer dollars maintain it. Every taxpayer in this country has a stake in the Russell Senate Office Building. And it's a symbol of national shame. I'm talking about racism in America now. How we learn to tolerate it. But remember this, those who tolerate racism perpetuate racism. Let's talk about the Russell Senate Office Building, named in honor of a self-proclaimed white supremacist. self-proclaimed white supremacists. This is Brother Richard Russell, Senator. I refer to every man as my brother. And if not my brother, according to the notable anthropologist, paleontologist L.S.B. Leakey, we're probably cousins. So we probably related in some way. But this is Mr. Richard Russell. Mr. Richard Russell is prominently displayed in this building. When you enter this building, you enter into a rotunda. This is where Mr. Richard Russell is prominently displayed, in the Russell Senate Office Building. You'll note at the top, we have styled this, we have captioned it, self-proclaimed white supremacists. This is Mr. Richard Russell, self-proclaimed white supremacists. This building is named in honor of Mr. Richard Russell, this man, the self-proclaimed white supremacist. He stands there today in the rotunda of the Richard Russell Office Building. Richard Russell. Now, why would I make an issue of this for you in talking about racism and enslavement? Well, here's why. Powerless. Remember, powerless. Powerless. This is the building. Powerless. We, people of African ancestry, are powerless to remove this man's statue and to remove his name from a building that we support. We are powerless. We can't get it done. The Senate knows that Richard Russell was a bigot and a racist. They probably see him more of a racist than as a bigot, but he was the person who fought anti-lynching legislation. He's the person who fought civil rights legislation. He's the person who co-authored the Southern Manifesto, and he is the person who stands in the rotunda all to himself in the Russell Senate Office Building. Yes, we've asked that his name be removed from the building and that his statue be removed. Just as the Senate has removed names from military bases, the Congress has, House and Senate. Senate can remove that name of Richard Russell. This is Richard Russell, standing in his place of grandeur. But there's more to be said about this. I would now like you to see a different view of the Russell statue, a different view. Your perch can sometimes influence what you see. I have shown you Mr. Russell up close. Now let's step back and take a look. Here is Mr. Russell. He's standing here. And by the way, I respect and I say Mr. Russell. There are people who would demean me for saying Mr. Russell. He was a former United States Senator. He was a bigot and a racist, but I still give him respect. So here's Mr. Russell. Now, let's put this here for just a moment. There's Mr. Russell. He's here. I hope the camera can pick him up. But here's what you cannot identify that I have to identify for you. Above Mr. Russell, in the Russell Senate Office Building, above Mr. Russell, in these various spaces along this area in the Russell Senate Office Building, are news outlets. Major news outlets. CNN is there. MSNBC is there. Major news outlets. They occupy the space above Mr. Richard Russell. Who can deny that they are aware, that they are sharing space with a self-proclaimed white supremacist? Have they no shame? CNN, have you no shame? You fight against hate and you house yourself above Richard Russell? Have you no shame, MSNBC? Have you no shame? The man's name shouldn't be on the building, his statue shouldn't be in the building, and you ought not be housed above him. The Richard Russell office building with Senator Russell in all of his glory, above his head, notable news sources, reporting the news, not reporting that Richard Russell is right beneath them, the racists. Remember now, those who tolerate racism perpetuate racism. All of these news sources, I just mentioned two, Fox is there too, all of them, they're there. And if one of them that I have called is not there, you let me know. I don't go over there. I haven't been over there. I'm a one-person protest. I don't go in the building. I respect myself too much to go there. I have dignity. I have respect for myself. I'm a sinner, but I'm not that much of a sinner. So those who tolerate this perpetuate it, tolerate this statue being there, they perpetuate it. So I'm saying it, CNN is perpetuating racism. MSNBC, you're perpetuating racism. Fox, you're perpetuating racism. I'm saying it, and I know that I'm powerless to do anything to you about it. You can stay there as long as you desire. Never report it, and it becomes a non-issue. You can stay there, and the world will remain as it is. There'll just be one member of Congress who came to the floor of the House of Representatives and had the courage to call you out. I know you won't get any airtime on CNN or MSNBC or Fox. You can't challenge the news media and tell them where they're wrong and expect them to allow you to be heard. That just doesn't work that way in this country, probably in very few countries in the world. You can't do it. So I understand that. I understand that I'm powerless. But I also understand that I can take a stand. I also understand that I can point out to people that, yes, you can challenge power. Yes, you can be that person who speaks truth to power. Yes, you can do it, but here's what's even more important than speaking truth to power, and that is speaking truth about power. You see, to speak truth to power, you simply say, power, we have a problem, and we need to solve it. But when you speak truth about power, you say, power, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, we have a problem, and you're a part of it. They're part of the problem. And there are others up there with them, but you're part of the problem. Richard Russell, a self-proclaimed white supremacist, in a rotunda all to himself. I know of no other rotunda that has a single person in it, if there may be one. And there you are, housing yourselves above him. Now, if I'm wrong, let me know I'm wrong, and I'll come back to this very podium and I will extend an apology. I will do it. That's what, when you're wrong, that's what you do. So I'll come back and I will extend an apology. So I ask you, CNN, I ask you, MSNBC, I ask you, Fox, tell me I'm wrong and that you're not reporting from above Richard Russell. Richard Russell. I'm talking about racism in America. I'm talking about how those who tolerate it perpetuate it. And I'm going to now talk about solutions. There are many solutions. Please don't take this as all-inclusive, but this is necessary solution. Necessary solution to, as a matter of necessity, deal with how this has been inculcated into society such that these prominent news sources would tolerate this. There are some things that have to be done. They could be very beneficial in getting it done. But if they're tolerating this, I don't know to what extent we can count on them. But here's what we have to do. One of the things that we have to do is acknowledge the conscience agenda. Let me remove Mr. Russell for just a moment. He still maintains his place of honor in the Senate, but not here, not while I'm talking. And now we have to acknowledge this conscience agenda, our moral imperative. Here's what we have to do. We have to acknowledge slavery, the horrors of it, but also set aside a day. And by the way, I'm not asking for a holiday with people being paid and off from work. I don't want that. I don't think that we should have that for something as important as this. I don't want it to become something where people are going to have a mattress sale and talk about how you can get a great discount. Slavery Remembrance Day discount. Come on in and get your mattress. I don't want that. I just want people to understand that August 20th annually ought to be Slavery Remembrance Day. And I thank God that at least one prominent person has acknowledged it, and there are others that I'll mention very briefly, but this one, perhaps I'll reverse the order and let's do it this way. Mr. Steny Hoyer helped me to get legislation through the House recognizing Slavery Remembrance Day. Mr. Hoyer, I thank you. I'll never let history write you out. Thank you for what you did. Slavery Remembrance Day is important. We have Juneteenth, yes. Juneteenth is about celebrating freedom. When General Gordon Granger came into Galveston, Texas, and read General Order Number 3. That's worthy of celebrating. But this is about commemoration, not celebration. This is about commemorating those lives that suffer for some 240 years to make America great. 240 years of suffering, born into it in a caste system. Born into it, babies were slaves. Enslaved people is a more appropriate way to say it. Babies were enslaved human beings, grew up to become enslaved adolescents, went on to become enslaved adults, and thereafter died as enslaved human beings, lives devoted to making America great. No emolument accorded them. No recompense has been accorded them. No consideration other than they had the necessities to remain alive so that they could continue to be enslaved persons who could produce a work product. So we should honor this day. I'm proud of Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has helped to get this done and she's working on the Senate to get the resolution through the Senate. The same Senate, by the way, same Senate that won't remove Richard Russell's name from the Russell Senate Office building. Same Senate that won't remove his statue from the rotunda that he happens to enjoy all to himself. But we have to have Slavery Remembrance Day. We should honor these economic foundational mothers and fathers on whose sacrifice America has become the great nation that it is. Built the Capitol. Yes, these folk, their hands helped to construct the very Capitol that we have here, helped to construct the White House, built the roads and the bridges, planted the seeds, harvested the crops, fed the nation. Yet, they're not properly recognized. In fact, this Congress did something that demeaned them. Here's what the Congress did, 1956. The Congress of the United States of America, the country I love, land of the free and home of the brave. The Congress of the United States of America awarded Congressional Gold Medals to the enslavers. Congressional Gold Medals to Confederate soldiers. Nothing to the people who built, whose hands helped build the Capitol. Nothing to them, but to the enslavers, the persons who fought to maintain slavery. Remember, it was to be a permanent, we had to go to war. Thank God for Abraham Lincoln. Had to go to war to deal with slavery. People died. What a tragedy it was. But that's what it took to eliminate slavery in this country. So we gave a Congressional Gold Medal to the Confederates. Nothing to the persons who were enslaved. Well, we can remedy that. Remember now, I'm talking about things that we need to do to change the mindset that we have. And we need, I think this Congress should, award a Congressional Gold Medal to the enslaved. I mean, that seems so easy to comprehend, but yet so hard for this Congress to do. To just acknowledge that these folk who suffered for 240 years, they ought to be acknowledged for what they did too, for what they did here, for what they did with the White House, for what they did for this country. A Congressional Gold Medal for the enslaved. There's a resolution pending for such a thing to be done. But remember, powerless. Powerless. And we are shown to be powerless when something as simple as this can't be done. When something as simple as having a Slavery Remembrance Day where the Congress, meaning the House and the Senate and the President, acknowledges it. We have a Pearl Harbor remembrance. We have a 9/11 remembrance. We have a Holocaust remembrance, meaning the President, the House, and the Senate recognizes Holocaust remembrance. We don't have such a thing for the people who are the economic foundational mothers and fathers of this country. No slavery remembrance. Don't have it. That's because we are still powerless. We have some power. Yes, we are senators and we are in Congress and we've had a president and there's a vice president, but we are still shown that we cannot demand justice and get justice. There are people who would say, you're not asking for it properly. You have to be subservient. Be servile. And maybe you can get it then. We can't demand it and get it. I demand it. We ought to have Slavery Remembrance Day acknowledged by the House, the Senate, and the presidency. as well as a Congressional Gold Medal accorded the enslaved. And then, I've talked about it, we need to remove Richard Russell's name from the Russell Senate Office building. I won't go into any great details in explaining that. I've gone through it clearly. And there's legislation for atonement that's pending. I won't go through that. But I do want to go to the last item on my agenda, which is number 5, and so that I may govern myself accordingly. Mr. Speaker, if I may please, can you tell me how much time I have left?
The gentleman has 26 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk now about the thing that I think will help not only with slavery remembrance, but also will help us with other issues that have not been resolved. And that is the establishment of a Department of Reconciliation. We have not reconciled, Mr. Speaker. We have not reconciled. We have not. There are chasms that exist that we cannot see, but that we can experience. We need to span the chasms that divide us. And to do so, we need to have a methodology by which it can be accomplished. And to have that methodology, we have to have a means in place. This would be the means by which the methodology could be enforced, put into motion, so that we can get reconciliation. Reconciliation. There ought to be in this country what we could not do after the war because President Johnson was more interested in the antebellum aspect of the war. He would have gone back if he could have, but he could only go so far. But he did limit forward movement. So we didn't get reconciliation. But we need a Department of Reconciliation with a Secretary of Reconciliation. A person who wakes up every morning with the mission of helping us to reconcile the differences in a very positive way, I might add, the differences that separate us, the chasms that we failed to span over the centuries. And remember now, slavery lasted for more than 2 centuries. It wasn't a 20-year event. That's why some of the aspects of the powerlessness are still inculcated into our society. But continuing here, so we need this Department of Reconciliation with a secretary and undersecretaries of reconciliation to deal with all of the invidious discrimination that has not been resolved. There are issues related to other persons that have not been resolved. One example would be the indigenous Americans, the first Americans. Their issues have not been resolved. These are the folk who suffered the Trail of Tears. These are the folk who suffered wars against them and made them the villains, defending their land, and they're the villains. We need to resolve this. The Department of Reconciliation would help us do this. It won't be done in a month, a week, a year or 2, a decade. It's going to take time, but it's not going to be done without some structure. It's not going to be done with just the passage of time. It won't happen. Dr. King reminded us that it's not the passage of time that makes change. These are not his exact words, but rather what you do with time as it passes. What do you do with the time? If you don't make good use of it, the change won't take place. So we need this Department of Reconciliation, and we need a Secretary of Reconciliation, and we need undersecretaries of reconciliation, and we need a budget. I have proposed that the budget for this department be indexed, tied to, if you will, indexed tied to the Defense Department's budget. Why the Defense Department's budget? Because we will always fund the Defense Department. And I think that we should have a budget that's indexed, tied to it. The money wouldn't come out of the Defense Department's budget. There would be money that would be the equivalent of some percentage, say 10% of what's in the Defense Department for a Department of Reconciliation, so that we can at some point, span the chasms that divide, separate, and prevent us from having the level of unity within our country that we richly deserve, given the great documents, the great founding documents of the country. All persons created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Certain documents, the pledge, liberty and justice for all. So we need to do these things. And I am committed to getting these things done. I'm committed to Slavery Remembrance Day. I am committed. I stand alone sometimes with this commitment. It's an idea that I brought to this Congress, and I'm going to stay with it. Yes, I'm the progenitor of Slavery Remembrance Day. I'm going to stay with it. I'm not letting it go. The Congressional Gold Medal for the Enslaved, I will not let it go. Removing Mr. Russell's name, I will not let it go. Establishing a Department of Reconciliation, I won't let it go. The question is, will others find it within their hearts, their spirits, to take a similar stance? I pray that they will. I close with this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we persons of African ancestry have suffered, our ancestors have, and are still suffering from the indignation and humiliation associated with slavery and segregation. We're still suffering from it. We're still suffering from racism. There are people who would say, forget the racism. I'm not going to forget it, just as I would not want my Jewish brothers and sisters to forget the Holocaust. Don't forget the Holocaust. And I won't forget slavery. We're still suffering. And we are suffering because of what I indicated initially, why we were brought to this country. When I say we, I'm talking about my foreparents, why they were brought to this country. They were brought here to be. They were brought here to be a permanent, remember, 240 years of slavery is evidence of it, centuries, identifiable. They wanted people of color because they could spot them easily. Powerless. No power, not recognized. The law recognizes no rights for you as they relate to persons who were Anglo. Subservient, always servile, always humble, always ready to serve, pleading with the master, give me something that I may do for you, master. Caste. Difference between caste and class. Remember, class is a socioeconomic condition. Caste is usually hereditary. You're born into it, you live it, you die. We're still suffering from this original reason that enslaved persons were brought to this country. But I believe that we can bend the arc of the moral universe toward justice for African Americans and all other persons who suffer from invidious discrimination. I believe it. I believe we can achieve it. I just know that we have to work hard to get it done. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the time. I am proud to have stood here, and I proudly move forward with the conscious agenda that I have called to the attention of our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
With that, Mr. Green yields. Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair and not to a perceived viewing audience. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There we go. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart to honor the extraordinary life of one Allison Getz, a friend, a public servant, and a true Texan that is leaving and has left a tremendous mark on Southeast Texas. Allison's public service wasn't just a job, Mr. Speaker, it was a calling. From chairing events like the Spindletop Ball to leading organizations such as the Symphony League, Temple Emmanuel, and the Fire Museum of Texas, she demonstrated a deep commitment to the betterment of our community. For the last 9 years, she served as Jefferson County tax assessor collector. Her innovation and modernization efforts as tax assessor earned her the prestigious title of Tax Assessor of the Year for the entire state of Texas in 2021, and that's no easy task. I speak for Southeast Texas, Mr. Speaker. We are forever indebted to Allison's tireless devotion and dedication. Allison always said 3 things when she talked with anyone. She said, "How can I help? And is there anything you need?" And she always finished with, "I appreciate you." She was known for her huge heart, her love for her husband, Mike, her parents, children, grandchildren, and most of all, Southeast Texas. My bride, Brenda, and I were deeply saddened to learn about her passing on October the 10th, 2023. Our prayers are with her family during this very, very difficult time. As we bid farewell to this remarkable public servant, let's remember Allison Julia Getz with a great deal of gratitude. May her legacy continue to inspire us to continue the work and compassion she so fervently championed. Allison, thank you for your dedication to community. We will miss you. You will never be forgotten and always be in our hearts. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to honor the life and legacy of one Joseph Joe Ruda, who passed away on October the 14th, 2023, at the age of 96. Joe was born on February the 25th, 1927. He was one of the dwindling members of the greatest generation. Like so many others of his time, he actually lied about his age to join the Army during World War II. Joe served in Germany as an ambulance driver at Dachau concentration camp, where he saw firsthand the horrors of the Holocaust. Upon returning home, he married Victoria D'Amico and became a truck driver. Vicki and Joe were married for 75 years, Mr. Speaker, having 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. One of those grandchildren is my Chief of Staff, Jeanette Whitener. She's a jewel. Joe was an avid card player. He enjoyed doing puzzles, and he especially enjoyed time spent with his family. He was an amazing husband, amazing father and grandfather, and great-grandfather. He served this country and his family with pride, generosity, and devotion. Joe will be missed by his family and everyone who knew him. Another of the greatest generation now gone. Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the life and legacy of William Bill Ambrose Biggs III, who passed away on November the 16th, 2023. Bill Biggs was born in Abilene, Texas on February the 19th, 1937, and at the age of 11, him and his family, Mr. Speaker, moved to Austin, Texas, where his local adventures would make Tom Sawyer green with envy. Bill graduated from Austin High School in 1955 and went directly to the University of Texas, where he graduated with a degree in chemistry in the year 1959. He also earned his MBA from Texas in 1961. Following graduation, Bill went on to active duty in the United States Army in 1962. During his military career, he earned his Ranger tab, graduated from the Army War College, and rose to the rank of colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve before retiring in 1988. His final commendation was the Legion of Merit. Perpetually in motion, after the Army and retiring from his successful business in Pennsylvania, Bill returned to school, earned his J.D. Juris Doctor from the St. Mary's School of Law in San Antonio, and graduated in 2002. He was a tremendous husband, father, grandfather, brother, son, entrepreneur, citizen, soldier, and devoted Texas Longhorn. Bill will be sorely missed by his family and all who knew him. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bid farewell to a true titan of Texas, a man whose dedication has left an indelible mark on the landscape of the greater Houston region, Bob Harvey, the president and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership. Bob is retiring at the end of 2023. Over the past decade, under his steadfast leadership, the Houston metro area has witnessed unprecedented growth and prosperity. A lifelong Houstonian, Bob dedicated each waking day to champion the city's expansion, working hand in hand with business community to foster opportunities for every single Houstonian. The Greater Houston Partnership is so much more than the Chamber of Commerce for one of America's great cities. Under Bob's guidance, the partnership became a beacon for economic development, advocating for policies that sustain the thriving business environment while enhancing the overall quality of life for all of its citizens. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues in the House to join me in congratulating my friend, Bob Harvey, on a well-deserved retirement. Thank you, Bob, for your service to our dynamic region and our beloved state of Texas. Blessings to you, your lovely wife, Vicki, and three great kids, Michael, Tom, who work for us, and Mary, as you embark on the next chapter of a life well lived. Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the incredible life of one Mr. John Paul Spees, Sr., a man whose journey from Gary, Indiana, through Lake Charles, Louisiana, to the great state of Texas has left an indelible mark on our community. Born in 1936, he went on to be with Jesus on December the 1st, 2023. Paul was a proud Navy veteran. Paul served 2 years on the USS Randolph. His dedication to our great country was surpassed only by his devotion to his family. In 1958, he married his beautiful wife, the former Sheila Sarver, and together they were blessed with 4 children, of which we get the privilege of knowing Kelly and her great husband, Paul. 4 children, 14 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. In addition to God, family, and country, Paul loved skeet shooting at the world championship level, I might add, tinkering with cars, and sharing his musical talents on the piano and accordion. Now we know where Kelly gets it from. Mr. Speaker, though we mourn his passing, we celebrate a life well lived with Kelly and Paul and all their family, and we commend Paul Spee's legacy of love, laughter, and service. Mr. Speaker, I also rise today to honor the life and legacy of a businessman and philanthropist, one Robert Moody, who was known to many of us as Bobby. Bobby's journey was one of resilience, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to family, community, and the city he cherished, which I'm privileged to represent, Galveston, Texas. Bobby's legacy is etched in the successes of businesses he shepherded for over 6 decades. His leadership transformed National Western Life Insurance Company and American National Insurance Company into industry leaders, providing financial security for millions. Yet Bobby's heart beat the strongest for our Galveston community with a passion that is reflected in the creation of Moody Gardens and the Moody Neurorehabilitation Institute, both testaments to his philanthropic vision. Beyond his professional achievements, Bobby's devotion to his family was unparalleled. As a loving father, grandfather, and a great-grandfather, he effortlessly blended business acumen with the warmth of family life. So as we bid farewell to such a stalwart leader, a compassionate patriarch, and a beacon of generosity, let us hope, pray, and carry and work to carry forward Bobby's legacy of resilience, empathy, as well as community stewardship. The island city of Galveston and the Moody family have lost a guiding light, Mr. Speaker. But Bobby's spirit lives on in the institution he built and in the countless lives that he touched. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate 125 years of Port Arthur, Texas, a community with a storied history located in the great 14th Congressional District of the great state of Texas. The city of Port Arthur began as a dream, quite frankly, of a railroad man named Arthur Stilwell, who envisioned it as a trade and tourism center and a port town that eventually wound up bearing his name. From tankers navigating the waves to an oil boom that echoed with promises of prosperity, Port Arthur has been a beacon on the Gulf Coast. Refineries proudly claiming, quote, "We oil the world," end quote. The allure of Pleasure Island, a Cajun influx adding spice to our culture, and I know that's true because my bride grew up in Nederland and she can cook that Cajun food. And a museum on the Gulf Coast honoring our famous folk. Port Arthur is a tapestry of history as rich as the soil beneath our feet. Early on, Port Arthur became the heartbeat of the petrochemical industry. In 1901, following the game-changing gusher of Spindletop, Gulf Oil Corporation set up shop, followed by Texaco in 1902. This marked the dawn of a new era. By 1957, we had become the center of the world's prosperous oil refining facilities, fueling not just our city, not just our state, but the world. Today, Port Arthur is home to over 55,000 hardworking, what I like to call, love calling, 55,000 salt of the earth folks. It is truly something special. And let me tell you, as your representative of the city of Port Arthur, I am grateful every day to stand before you as the voice of Port Arthur here in the hallowed halls of Congress. Is representing a community with such a rich history, where resilience and progress echo from every corner, it is an honor beyond measure. Here's to 125 years of Port Arthur's pride, their progress, and that enduring Southeast Texas spirit that defines us. Happy anniversary, Port Arthur. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the Grove City Marshal, Mr. Norman Reynolds, Jr., on the occasion of his retirement. This is the end of an era for the Groves Police Department. Norman Reynolds Jr.'s journey into law enforcement is a tale deeply intertwined with his family's legacy. A third-generation police officer, Norman joined the ranks through the encouragement and wise counsel of his father, Norman Reynolds Sr. With over 41 years of dedicated service, Mr. Speaker, Reynolds has not only become the longest-serving lawman in Southeast Texas, but also a steadfast pillar in the Groves Police Department. Marshal Reynolds, thank you. Thank you for your unwavering service, your commitment to keeping our community safe, and for leading the Groves Police Department with dignity as well as honor. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of a grateful community, it is my absolute honor and privilege to honor City Marshal Norman Reynolds. I join his wife, Becky, and his family and friends and colleagues in extending him best wishes in his retirement. Mr. Speaker, I'll rise to talk about the border for just a second. Joe Biden and company have allowed the situation at our southern border to escalate from a crisis to a full-blown catastrophe. It was announced just this past Tuesday. CBP saw more than 12,000 encounters with illegal immigrants along the border. Let that sink in. 12,000 in one day. Those are the ones they know about. That American taxpayers are having to pay for, I want to add. It's unconscionable. Under this administration's failed policies, every town is a border town, Mr. Speaker, and the rest of the country is beginning to feel the strain that my home state of Texas has felt for so long under a constant stream of illegal migrants encouraged by President Biden's wide open border. That is why I introduced H.R. 6477, a bill that would effectively re-implement the Remain in Mexico protocols established by and under President Trump. It would crack down on the rampant abuse of the asylum system that has enabled so much of this problem. My bill would also hold the administration responsible for knowing the whereabouts and the status of the illegal migrants throughout the parole process. It's commonsensical, and I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor it. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to proudly acknowledge and celebrate the remarkable achievement of Alvin Community College. Let me hasten to add that it's where I met my beautiful bride of 47 years, 49 years ago, in the cafeteria there at Alvin Junior College, or what was called Alvin Junior College. Alvin Community College, once again, for the 7th time, ACC has been recognized by their prestigious Aspen Institute as one of the top 150 community colleges in America. The Aspen Institute's recognition, citing ACC's achievements in teaching, degree completion, workforce success, and equitable outcomes, underscores the college's commitment to student success. Don't I know it? As an ACC alum, I can personally attest to the transformative power of this institution. It laid the academic groundwork for my future, and even more importantly, became the serendipitous backdrop where I met my beautiful bride. Did I mention that, Mr. Speaker? I think I did. So let me just say thank you, Alvin Community College, for not only educating generations of folks from Texas' 14th Congressional District and the neighboring communities, but congratulations for continuing to shine as one of the best in the nation. ACC, y'all rock.
Does the gentleman yield back?
I'm fixing to. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Okay, I think I'll take a moment of privilege to say beat Army. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, is recognized for the remainder of the hour as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you for your patience as we sort of get ourselves set up here. Okay, let's start with, I obviously try to do this every week we're here. And my goal is not to come and try to sound like some idiot economics professor. I'm trying to sort of point out the biggest thing that's ahead of us, the reason we're here, and the hardest thing we talk about. But one of the things I want to start with is apparently I hurt some people's feelings in the last two floor speeches when I walked through the math and some of the reaction I got. And I don't care. It's one of those, the math is the math and the math will win. The math always eventually wins. And this is substantially, welcome to a math-free zone. Just another side thing I want to point out. For some of the folks who end up watching a video of this or those things and they get cranky, oh, there's no one in the House. That's actually the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be off in their committees or other places working. This is our chance to sort of talk to the body and understand. You're on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of televisions right now, talking to staff, talking this. So there's a reason I show up with these charts. It's trying to see if you can break through and understand just the scale of what's going on. Because remember, we have a debt and demographics issue. And that's the thing that just enrages me. If you're on the left, you don't tax enough. And we're on the right, we can't cut enough. Which, look, I'm more on the cut side. But you still got a mathematical problem. And that is, and I'll show you in some of the slides, you can get rid of every dime of defense. You can get rid of every dime of discretionary. And you're still borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars. Last year, we borrowed 8.4% of the economy. So you every once in a while hear these discussions, oh, we're going to have a 2% GDP growth. Okay, that's fine. That's sort of what long-run projection is. We borrowed 8.4. Was just the borrowing, not the spend, the borrow. And it's also one of the reasons we've tried now not to talk in percentages of GDP because no one has any idea what the hell you're talking about. So let's actually have some fun here. And Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, we're going to actually try to break this up in 2 or 3 different presentations over the next couple weeks. Today, I'm just going to relay out the math. One more time, see if any of it still sinks through. And then next week, we're going to try something that we haven't done in a few months. We're going to come in with optimism. The breakthroughs in healthcare, the breakthroughs in technologies, the opportunities that are out there that will help us bend the debt curve. But once again, I'm going to go back to a sentence I had couple moments ago. For those who will text my office, call my office, fuss at me when I'm in Costco and say, David, I want you to balance the budget this year. I can do it. You just have to let me be willing to get rid of all the defense, all the discretionary, and $300, $400 billion of your Medicare. That's how upside down the numbers are. So let's walk through some of this. This fiscal year, so we're almost 2+ months into this fiscal year, the number one spend will be Social Security. Now, let's talk about this for a moment. Social Security is its own trust fund, its own funding mechanism. None of the money from is spent in the general fund. It's loaned to the general fund, And the Social Security gets these special treasury notes, and then they're paid interest twice a year. And if you ever geek out and you're someone that watches U.S. debt and all of a sudden there's this sudden spike, often that's actually because we made our twice a year interest payment to Social Security. But it's separate. But you also got to understand the flip side of that. In 8 years, 9 years, when the Social Security Trust Fund is empty, it doesn't have a claim on the general fund either. That also means, as CBO has projected, CBO puts out a number of 2033. The Social Security actuaries, which I think are a year behind in their reports, had 2034. But let's use CBO. CBO says a 25% cut in your check is coming in 8.5, 9 years. Okay? Average couple in America on Social Security, I think that's like $17,400 cut. We will double poverty of the senior population in America. Okay? It's immoral. And the solution we get is, okay, just raise these taxes, do the cap. Now, we're still working on the math because it turns out Tax Foundation, the actuaries, CBO, have vastly different modeling numbers. We found a couple interesting nuggets. The Democrat bill does cut benefits. Now, cuts benefits on high-income earners where they told us they would never cut benefits. So we're starting to realize rhetoric is often different than the reality when you're trying to make the math work. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll actually have nailed down the actual impact. But right now, it looks like raising the cap on Social Security, doing these other mechanisms, still does not close that $616 billion shortfall. That $616 billion shortfall, that's the very first year the Social Security Trust Fund is gone. Why this isn't talked about constantly here, when defense is like $830 billion, and just the shortfall in a single year on Social Security is over 600, does anyone see the scale we're talking about? And understand, if we use the tax solutions, where you say, we're just going to raise these taxes. We're going to take everyone over 400,000, or just everyone, and you're going to pay the extra 12.4%, and then we're going to tax some of these unrealized capital gains and these things to make up that difference. Okay, if that's the Democrat solution, you've just used up your entire, you just used up your entire opportunity because there's no more money. What do you do with the other 2/3 of the borrowing, which is the shortfall in Medicare? You have no more capacity, and we're going to walk through that. So why this board here is so important is to understand 2024. Social Security will be $1,450 billion this year. So $1,450 billion. Social Security is our number one spend. Gross interest. Gross interest, that means the interest we pay to Social Security, but also the interest we pay to whoever has been willing to buy one of our bonds, is over $1 trillion this year. Interest now is number 2. Interest is now number 2 this fiscal year. That wasn't supposed to happen for like 8-10 years. And it happened. Number 3 is Medicare. Number 4 on our spend is defense. So when you have someone who runs around saying, cut defense, it's where all our spending is, they're either willfully ignorant or they're just out of date. They're just so out of date. Demographics is the driver of our debt. And it's so hard to talk about that because one thing, it's not Republican or Democrat. Us becoming gray hairs is not Republican or Democrat. It's math. The solutions may ultimately be partisan, but what we are as a society isn't. And I'm going to be much more gentle because I have someone behind me, so I'm not going to throw the boards. That was also one of the complaints. So one more time, exact thing I just said, but I made it a bar chart because some people, you know, the bar chart is much easier to see, particularly on television. This is our Social Security. This is interest. Now, if you say, David, it's not fair to use gross interest because we're paying ourselves. We're not paying ourselves. We're paying the trust funds. Remember, we just talked about Social Security being its own. You know, if you want to conflate the two, then you're sort of breaking the wall, but God bless you. But so if you just go to net interest, it's still right there at the second biggest expense we have in the federal government this year. And then you have Medicare, and defense now is number 4. Why does this matter? The number of folks who live in this sort of mathematical fantasy world, and just skip 1965, you can see, but you see this red here? This is last year's spend. 73% of the federal government spending was on autopilot. We don't get to vote on it. You get elected to Congress, you do not vote on 73% of all the spending because it's formula. You worked your 40 quarters, you get the Social Security. You hit a certain age and participate, you get your Medicare. You're part of a certain tribal group, you get this. These are things that it's formula. You fall below a certain income, you get these. Defense was 13% of our spending last year. Well, defense is really tricky. Yes, we need modernization. Maybe some of the large weapon platforms, need a revolution in technology. Those things, fine. But the fighting you hear, the fighting that ultimately removed the speaker, the things that go on here, is over this little green wedge here. That's 15%. 15%. Punchline you need to just burn into your mind. All this green is borrowed. All this blue is borrowed. And last year, about $400 billion of the red was borrowed. Everything a member of Congress votes on is borrowed money. Sink that in. Everything we vote on is on borrowed money. But the frustrating thing is, we have absolute battles here on the floor in our committees, trying to save a little here, trying to save a little here. Fine. We should do it. One of the reasons the appropriations bills are taking so long is we're breaking them down line item by line item, saying, does this make sense? But stop pretending that in the end of 10 years you'll even notice those differences. They won't even show up as rounding errors because we're borrowing. And this is really important to me, and forgive me if it's slightly narcissistic. I don't mean it to be. We're trying to find some way to communicate math. So we started something in our office a couple weeks ago where you can go to our official website and you can sign up. Just give me your name and your cell number. And every day, we're going to text you. And I know this is really exciting. We're going to text you what the day's borrowing was and what the day's tax receipts were. And we're going to do it 2 ways, so we're doing it absolutely intellectually honest. We're going to give you a 364-day clock, so no timing effects, because Treasury at the end of the fiscal year played some games where they roll some of the spending into the next year. There's all these timing effects. And then we'll give you the actual fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, I won't ask you to actually answer this because I'm actually not supposed to have the dialogue with you, but it's always fun to point at you. What would you guess we're borrowing per second? Per second, borrow. I think as of yesterday, because we printed this a couple days ago, we were at $78,480 per second. You can sign up on our website and get this wonderful text message sent to you every day with the actual facts, not the make-up crap goes on here. The number of times I hear people speaking behind these microphones, and you're pulling out your calculator and going, where'd they come up with that? They just make things up because these numbers are so difficult. And if you actually do, so far this fiscal year, and it will change as tax collections come in, we're over $112,000 per second in borrowing. And of that $78,000 we're borrowing right now per second over the last 364 days, $35,000 of that now is interest. And it gets worse because lots of the bonds we sold over the last couple of years, because we're idiots, we sold short on the curve. So we had incredibly low interest rates, and now those bonds are going to have to be refinanced at these higher interest rates. So I'm going to put this one back. We're just trying to help understand interest is one of our great fragilities. And what that means is, what happens when Congress is no longer in charge of the federal budget, but the bond market is? Bond market gets cranky. Look, 3 weeks ago, we had a 30-year bond auction. And I appreciate the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee letting me take my subcommittee, and we brought in some of the bond market experts. The hearing, once again, denigrated back into Republican-Democrat talking points, which frustrated me because we were supposed to have a serious conversation. So 3 weeks ago, we had a 30-year bond auction where the broker-dealers, the market makers, had to take 24% of it. Now, to everyone that's listening, you just went, huh? What happens when there's so few buyers or there's so much inventory that has to be sold that the broker-dealers don't have enough credit line to take it all down? Does that become a failed bond auction? Do we start to see stress in the world bond market? Remember, the entire world uses our bonds as the oil, the liquidity that keeps financial markets working here and around the world, our mortgages, everything else. Intellectually, I don't think we understand the serious nature of what a chart like this tells you when you start looking at gross interest, just marching along, and then this is functionally the last 12 months. So you had some of the lower interest rates in the beginning of 23. Remember, interest rates didn't really start to move until April last year. And this is showing just in the last 12 months, we functionally added $923 billion in financing costs in those interest rates. This year, it's going to be over $1 trillion. But then you come over here and you start even looking at things like net interest. It actually is, net interest is ultimately going up. Gross interest is starting to, the two lines are meeting. Why? Because the trust funds are getting smaller and smaller because they're shrinking. Remember, the Transportation Trust Fund is gone in a few years. Medicare Part A, the hospital portion, is gone in 7 years. Social Security is gone in 8.5, 9 years. So you've got to understand, that also has an effect also on our borrowing because we can't borrow internally. I don't think you need to see this board because I've said it like 6 times. We're borrowing $1 trillion gross interest this year. This one is important. And I feel like an idiot. I feel like I'm the only one who's coming up here and screaming about this. It's like, Schweikert, stop telling us things we don't want. There's math involved. What was the movie? There was a joke, or was it a Chevy Chase on Saturday Night Live 30 years ago? I was promised there was no math. This chart is very, very simple. We've done an estimate with the Joint Economic Economists that we are going to bring this fiscal year $9.6 trillion to the bond market. About $2 trillion of that will be what we call virgin. That's new borrowing to cover our shortfall because about 30% of everything we spend is on borrowed money. The rest is being refinanced. You go, well, what do we care? It's refinancing. We're now refinancing at much higher interest rates. If we're blessed, 10 years, a little over a 4, but that thing used to be at 0.6, 0.7. That gap is why we estimate, and so does Treasury, so does OMB, that we're going to spend over $1 trillion interest, and now it's our second biggest expense. And it just continues. To have you think about this, we actually had 2 months last year, now this is timing effects when tax receipts come in and those things, where we were borrowing to make our interest payments. Think about that. We were borrowing to be able to pay for our borrowing. Does anyone care? Is it just too complicated? Because this is the reality. Yet, if you ever listen to us, well, particularly my brothers and sisters on the left, they'll be behind this microphone saying, if we just tax rich people, we'll be fine. Let's keep spending. Major components of the 2023 federal budget. I'm not going to walk you through all the line items, but here's the basic point. If you break it out per household, last year our spending was over $48,000 a household. Okay. But receipts, that means tax collections, everything, from excise taxes to income taxes to capital gain, all of them. So we spent $48,000 per household last year. We took in $33,800. Anyone see a problem? And structurally, this gets uglier every year, uglier the next year, uglier the next year. And it's not because of mandatory spending. It's not because we're spending more money on foreign aid or spending money on this and that. It's demographics. I can show you slides. And I'm going to show a couple of these, and it's always the one I get the most angry emails about. 100% of the spending from today through the next 30 years, 100%, according to CBO, if anyone's ever read the CBO reports, Medicare and its interest for its shortfall. Remember, its cash shortfall is, I think, $88 trillion over those 30 years. Social Security, if we choose to backfill it in 9 years when the trust fund's gone. So it's functionally health care, and if we choose to backfill Social Security. So Medicare, health care, is the primary driver. It's 70+% of 70 of all future borrowing. So the brain trust here, we will come behind these microphones and we talk about financing it. Obamacare is a finance. The ACA is a financing bill. Who gets subsidized and who has to pay? Let's be honest, our Republican alternative was a financing bill. It's who got to pay and who got subsidized. And Medicare for All is a financing bill. None of it is about the adoption of technology that makes people healthier. I've come behind this microphone a handful of times this year and showed the data from the Joint Economic Committee Republican report. Go to chapter 3. And we did something very difficult, and they worked very hard. I vetted this for weeks. We did the thing we hate to talk about, but it's amazing, the numbers. We talked about diabetes and obesity in America. What would happen if I could come to you right now and say the most powerful thing you could do to roll down U.S. sovereign debt is take on obesity in America? The morality. It's also one of the most powerful things you could do for income inequality, for my tribal populations, for the rural poor, for the urban poor. We actually have some other crazy data talking about the labor force participation that would go up, family formation. Is that Republican or Democrat? It's just moral. And it's a solution. It was a few $1 trillion over the 10 years. It's the single most powerful thing you could do. How many people have you had come behind these microphones and want to talk about we need to help our brothers and sisters live? We are about to have a 5th year of life expectancy falling in America. Our brothers and sisters are dying. And you look at the data, drugs are right up there. Obesity, even higher. Is it just because you're going to get nasty people saying horrible things about you on social media? Well, screw them. The morality is on our side. It's great economics. It's also the right thing to do. And it's really hard around here. So let's actually talk about one of the other things. If I get one more leftist, well, you guys supported tax reform. Okay, single biggest movement in closing income inequality, single biggest movement in raising wages without raising inflation because it allocated money. Taxes, smartly designed taxes reform actually puts the money where it gets the greatest amount of productivity growth. Remember your high school economics class. What are the 2 ways you get paid more? Inflation, well, that doesn't get you anything. When your check goes up for inflation, you're just treading water. Our productivity. We'd had stagnant productivity for a couple decades. We did tax reform at the very end of 2017, and we had 2018, 2019, the first quarter of 2020 before the pandemic. And it was the ultimate in Goldilocks because we were growing, wages were going up, the poor were getting less poor. We didn't set off inflation. Income inequality is shrinking. And the Democrats keep saying, well, the face cost of that was going to be $1.7 trillion. And yes, we were taking in dramatically more tax receipts than we ever expected. And it actually added, a whole bunch to the life expectancy of Social Security. And stunning amounts of money came back repatriated from overseas, but it was a tax cut. And then the same brain trust on the left who's attacking tax reform forgets in just 20 months, President Biden's initiatives have added $4.8 trillion to the 10-year deficit. So they come at us hard. We did tax reform, and the face value of that was $1.7 trillion, but they've added $4.8, and it's like they forgot. And this also set off the best economists, I want to be honest on this, set off half of inflation. Some of it was half supply chain, half of it the amount of stimulus the Democrats dumped into the economy. And there's a great, and I've done it here on the floor, showing that inflation, the 30 months of inflation we just had, single biggest modern tax hike. Whether you know it or not, you've been crushed. If you live in the Phoenix, Scottsdale market, and you are not making 22, 23% more today than you did 30 months ago, you are poor. The brilliance of the left's, not liking inflation, but not screaming about it or trying to crush it, because there was things we could have done in this body to help roll down inflation, but it would have required policy, and it would have required them to admit it was crushing the working population, particularly the working poor. And the dirty little secret is it changes the debt to GDP because inflation devalues the existing debt, and you get to pay it back with inflated dollars. Whether you know it or not, you're about 20% poorer today than you were 30 months ago. And if your paycheck hasn't gone up, if you're in the Phoenix, Scottsdale, if you haven't gone up about 22%, you're poorer today. And it's math. And now we keep coming back to the understanding the scale of the drivers of our debt. And I'm not going to belabor this board. I've done it before. We can get rid of every dime of discretionary. There's no defense. There's no State Department. There's no Supreme Court. There's no Congress. It might actually be a good thing. But there's nothing. You're still borrowing. And even at the end of 10 years, you're still borrowing to help you understand the scale. And this one I've done entire presentations on, and this is the one I get the most interesting comments from Democrats. Well, we need to tax people more over $400,000. Okay, dirty, fun little secret. If you made $400,000 4 years ago, 3 years ago, today your purchasing power is probably $320,000, $328,000. So it's part of the scam here is let inflation run a bit, and you've heard of bracket creep, same sort of concept. So there's a great paper out there. It's on the Manhattan Institute, Brian Riedel's, where he basically took all sorts of studies, leftist studies, OMB studies, CBO studies, and said, what would happen, Mr. Speaker, what would happen if you basically maximized every tax rate? You took people over $400,000 and said, I'm going to maximize their income tax. And there's formulas now, because we have really good modeling for this. We can get them up to this tax rate before it changes their economic effects and the revenues actually go down. Maximize their capital gains, maximize their estate tax, maximize everything. And then adjust for the economic effects. And if you don't believe me, go read the paper. You get about 1.1 to 2% of GDP in new tax receipts. Okay, so let's split the difference. Let's call it 1.6 of new taxes by maximizing every tax rate over those over 400,000. Okay. The reality, the majority of people that make over 400,000 vote for Democrats anyway. So I don't know why we keep trying to say, but the economics are theater. Back to the point when we began. What did we borrow last year? Anyone listen? We borrowed 8.4% of GDP. 8.4. The Democrats' solution covers 1.6 of it. And when they do that, the capacity we need to be able to cover the shortfalls in Social Security, Medicare, if there's a disaster, if there's a war, we have no more capacity. This is how fragile we are as a society and intellectually vacuous the debate here is. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, may I ask my remaining time?
The gentleman has 9 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to wrap this up in the next couple boards so the gentleman from Texas can have his time. This is pretty much the same thing. We actually did the modeling on the permanent deficits, its interest carrying costs. That's what's over here in the whatever earth tones that is. And then we actually did one of the things I've heard the Progressive Caucus talk about. There's something absurd thing called the oligarchs tax, where they're going to find really rich people, and the richer they are, they're just going to take portions of their unearned income or their assets. Okay, fine. I guess that's where the left's brain is. But you got to stop lying to people about the math. It only covers a tiny fraction of the borrowing. And part of this even comes from one of the progressive groups' own math. So it's revenge for people who made a bunch of money, who vote for them and contribute to them, and then they make up the math. It's just, this is such an absurd place. And look, and maybe no one actually cares. You know, I've come here in the past and sort of showed the trajectory we're on to the amount of our economy that will be in debt. And we're already right here. Remember, this is a chart that if you actually start to do the baseline and you start to actually do different baseline annual growths, and you got to understand, in less than a decade, if our annual growth does not exceed the mean, meaning we only grow like at 0.5% over those years, you're already at 125% debt to GDP. Now, because we're the reserve currency, we get a little bit of a spiff of more capacity. But basically, you got to understand the number. The time for doing something was actually a couple of years ago. Every day we wait, the policy options, and this is going to be part of my closing, and I'm going to say it 2 or 3 times, the policy options close because there's things you need to do policy-wise. If you look at all the taxes the left wants to do, I just showed you a slide, it comes in about 1.5, 1.6% of GDP. We borrowed 8.4 last year. The things we can cut, I can get you a couple points of GDP we can cut. And I'm willing to do some very difficult cuts. Is it rational for us to borrow money on our non-defense discretionary and send it to states and jurisdictions that have their own taxing authority? You know, we're basically playing a game of here's some free money that we're borrowing. Well, that's, you know, $300 billion of the discretionary, but that's, you know, not even that's a fraction of the GDP. So the 2 ends here, that means the actual structural deficit that's actually from a demographics, you need a revolution in the costs. You can't tax enough and you can't cut enough. It's math. And once again, another model out there that shows once you do the actual economic effects of the taxing the rich, it gets you only a fraction of the 10-year deficit. And I'm going to close on this board because it's the board that enrages most people, and it's the one that's been modeled by left groups, right groups, you know, some of the honest universities. Back to the point I've made. This board is already a year out of date, meaning when it says over the next 30 years we'll have 116 trillion in borrowed money, we have a model in our office that's approaching 130 with the higher interest rates. But on this one, 77 trillion of that shortfall over the next 30 years is Medicare. It's healthcare costs. Another one is 38 trillion shortfall if we backfill Social Security and the shortfall there. It is immoral what this body is doing by avoiding, and every day we avoid, you find yourself saying taxes are your only opportunity, though I've just spent the last half an hour trying to explain policy is where the money's at. Making people healthier is the single biggest thing you can do to reduce the U.S. debt. Actually, and you reduce it, but you stabilize it, because we're going to continue to grow because we're getting old, and our healthcare costs are going to go up. And could we use technology? Can you use cures? If I could come to you tomorrow and point out the simple fact, 33% of all healthcare spending is diabetes. Okay? A revolution in our brothers and sisters with diabetes, which we know how to do it now. We actually have pharmaceuticals that are remarkable, and I'm not thrilled with talking about pharmaceuticals, but the math is the math. I sometimes have to deal with the reality in front of us. If you could cut diabetes in half in America, well, let's see. 15% of U.S. healthcare costs is about $700 billion a year. So if you cut 33%, so you'd be, and then you'd get the economic effects of people being able to work and other things. So trillion a year. I mean, you start to understand this doesn't have to be dour. It doesn't have to be, dystopian. There is hope. It just requires thinking. And maybe owning a calculator and reading. And we're too busy saying the same crap to our voters because they applaud for us, even though it's 20 years out of date, we say the same crap over and over. I've been here 10 years. When I first got elected, 1 out of 8 was 65. Today, it's like 1 out of 5.8 is now 65. Demographics is our destiny. Why are we incapable of telling each other the truth? And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9, 2023, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, for 30 minutes.
Okay, as Christmas approaches, I rise to share the histories behind the most beloved carols. My wife found this book, and I started reading it at breakfast one morning, and I thought it was really interesting to know where Christmas carols came from. So I thought I'd come up here and share this with my colleagues and with the rest of the country that cares. The carol, I've done 3 of these now, and I've got 30 minutes to do a bunch more. So today we're going to talk about a lot of them. And the first one is It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. It was written and composed by 2 men from similar backgrounds who never met. Edmund Hamilton Sears was a Unitarian minister and graduate of Harvard Divinity School. Sears, who preferred a quiet life among his New England congregation, emphasized Jesus' message of peace on earth, goodwill towards men, The words to the first It Came Upon a Midnight Clear appeared first in print in 1850 in the Christian Registry. By contrast, the composer, Richard S. Willis, led a very public life as an editor and critic with the New York Tribune. Willis composed carols while acting as a vestryman at the little church around the corner in New York City. The music of the carol was matched with Sears' words years later. And here's the results. And I can't sing, so don't ask me to sing. I'm going to read them, although I sang them in church. It came upon a midnight's clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men from heaven's all-gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they came with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lowly plains they bend a hovering wing, and ever o'er its Bethel sounds the blessed angel sings. O lo, the days are hastening on by prophet seen of old, when with the ever-circling years it shall come the time foretold, when peace shall come o'er all the earth, its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world send back the song which now the angels sing. The lyrics of Joy to the World are based on Psalms 98, which reads, Make a joyous noise unto the Lord, all the earth. Make a joyous noise and rejoice and sing praise, and make joyful noise to the Lord the King. In 1719, the English minister Isaac Watts wrote more than 600 hymns for children and adults, many of which are still sung today. Among his many admirers was Benjamin Franklin. The music composer was Lowell Mason, the father of American church music. He devoted his life to music education, eventually composing more than 1,600 religious works. Mason called his composition Antioch, a reference to the Syrian city where Jesus' disciples first came to be called Christians. Here are the words of the song. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Yes, let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature sing. Heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Savior reigns. Let all the songs employ, while fields and floods and rocks and hills and plains repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. There's a great deal of myth and conjecture around O Come Ye All Ye Faithful. Until 1900, people believed that the hymn could be traced back to the 13th century, and that St. Bonaventure possibly composed the original Latin words. A clergyman named Dom John Stefan researched the original manuscript and discovered that John Francis Wade wrote it. Wade, a Roman Catholic, lived in Douai, France, where he earned his living copying and teaching music. It was composed between 1740 and 1744. The hymn is where the hymn was locally well known. And here's the words of the song. O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Come and let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing songs of angels, sing in exultation. Sing, all you citizens of heaven above, glory to God in the highest. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be given glory. Be glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. The next one is one I like a lot. Philip Brooks approached the village of Bethlehem on Christmas Eve, 1866. He imagined the Holy Family on their journey nearly 2,000 years before. The Holy Land was still singing in his soul when he wrote, O Little Town of Bethlehem, a children's Sunday school 2 years later. O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above the deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in the dark streets shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. For Christ was born of Mary and gathered all above. While mortals sleep, the angels keep their watch of wondering love. A morning star together proclaim the holy birth, and praises sang to God the King, and peace to men on earth. O holy child of Bethlehem, descend to us, we pray. Cast out our sin and enter in. Be born in us today. We hear the Christmas angels, the glad tidings tell. O come, O come, O come, O come, O come with us, O Lord Emmanuel. My wife is Dutch, and she learned this song in German, where it was originally written. And when we sing it in church, she throws me off a little bit by singing in German, but it's still the same song. Silent Night possesses a simple dignity and power like the alpine setting where it was written. Popular legend states that Joseph Moore, the carol's composer, a village priest in the little Austrian town of Obendorf, penned the words to Silent Night on the on a Christmas Eve. He became distraught when the organ in his church broke down and couldn't be repaired in time for Christmas services. He enlisted a friend, a musician, Franz Gruber, to compose a guitar accompaniment for the song. The image of a starry night, the little church, and the lone guitar is one of enduring humility and quiet beauty. Moore wrote several arrangements for Silent Night. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Round yon virgin, mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight. Glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born, Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. The next song was written first recorded, the first Noel. It appeared in William Sandy's 1833 edition of Christmas Carols, Ancient and Modern. Folk songs enjoyed a revival in the 19th century in England, and there are several collections like Sandy's that include this carol. The first Noel, angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields where they lay, keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. They looked up and saw a star shining in the east, beyond them far. And on the earth it gave great light, and so it continued day and night. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. The star drew nigh to the northwest, or Bethlehem, it took its rest. And there it did stop and stay, there it did stop and stay, right over the place where Jesus lay. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. The melody of Green Sleeves is so old that it was impossible to date. But we know that Queen Elizabeth I danced to the melody and that Shakespeare mentioned it in The Merry Wives of Windsor. As with other carols, traditional music made a late marriage to sacred words. The English hymn William Dix composed these words under the title, The Manger Throne. What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping? From angels greet, thy voice is sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping. This is Christ the Lord. This is Christ the King, whom the shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him praise, the babe, the Son of Mary. Why he lies in such a mean state where oxen and ass are feeding. Good Christians fear, for sinners hear the silent words are pleading. This is the Christ, the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste, to bring him praise, the babe, the Son of Mary. And so bring him incense, gold, and myrrh. Come, peasant king, to own him. The King of kings, the salvation rings. Let lowling hearts enthrone him. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste, to bring him loud, the babe, the Son of Mary. It's my hope that you will enjoy these histories and think about them as you celebrate the holiday season. On behalf of the people of my district in Central Texas, I wish each of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Question on the motion. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House to now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Thank you. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion has been adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until noon on Monday next for morning hour debate.